Hello Formula One lovers, this is Lucien Byfieldt from Australia with the Formula Loosh podcast. Today I want to talk about team orders, the right and wrong, the good and the bad. Imagine, if you can, a scenario like this. Lewis Hamilton leading the final Grand Prix of the year, Bottas in second, Lewis needs to win the race to win the title, and his car, God forbid, develops an issue. He retires, social media goes crazy, but Bottas pulls in the pits and hands his car over to Hammy Boy, and Lewis goes on to win the race and the title. What the? Hang on, I hear you cry. But this is exactly what used to happen in racing, not just in Formula One. In the past, as is still the case today, though less publicised, there is usually a team leader, a driver hired to win the title, and the other supposed equal number ones are merely team players, despite what we are told. If you think the above is fanciful, then consider the 1951 French Grand Prix, where Alfa Romeo asked Luigi Fagioli to give his car to Juan Manuel Fangio due to mechanical issues. The result was a shared victory, and Fagioli was not a happy boy. What about the 1956 Italian Grand Prix, where Ferrari asked Luigi Musso to give his car to Fangio? Fangio again? See what I mean about the number one driver? But he refused. Amazingly, Peter Collins voluntarily gave up his car, despite his own title chances. It has been a long time since car swapping was allowed, but in other categories, even in the 80s, Peter Brock won one of his Bathurst victories that way, but that was touring cars. Team orders may not be about car swaps between drivers anymore, but positional shifts have been around for longer than a piece of string, and the following brief examples are some of the more famous ones, and also the more controversial. Malaysia 2013, Multi 21, where Webber had his engine turned down and was cruising due to team orders, which would ensure him winning the race with teammate in tow, for once. But Vettel disobeyed and just drove by. The resulting nonsense in the press was for Sebastian to appear genuinely unaware and then to half apologise, only 2 weeks later to adamantly state he did nothing wrong. Webber never won again. With his spirit broken, he retired and went to sports cars. Christian Horner must go down in history as the weakest boss of all time with his radio message to Sebastian. "This is silly, Seb, come on." Wow, powerful, enforcing team leadership there. Who on earth was running the team? Austria 2001 and 2002, both involving last lap position swaps where Rubens Barrichello handed a position to Michael Schumacher. In 2001 it was about second and third places, but in 2002 it was for the win. Crowds booed and Shuey did the innocent unaware thing, the feigned contrition, and then he stood Rubens on the top step of the podium anyway. This incident ultimately led to team orders being banned. But as the years rolled by, it was clear that team orders could not be policed, and they were eventually reinstated after the next example. Germany 2010. "Fernando is faster than you. Can you confirm you understood that message?" These words were broadcast for the whole world to hear when Felipe Massa was leading, and possibly he may have won for the first time since his terrible accident in Hungary 2009. It was blatant, obvious, but Fernando didn't quite go down the Vettel and Schumacher road, the school of acting innocent. But though defiant, he was clearly nervous and not happy about the backlash. As for Massa, he never won again. Nico Rosberg, the first driver to sign for the modern Mercedes team for 2010, even before Schumacher was signed. Now, he was clearly shown for 2 to 3 years that he was a nobody in the team. Reports and interviews revealed that he was not listened to in debriefs or even asked his opinion, and that Schumacher carried such an aura that Rosberg was not really considered until he started winning. Added to that, Malaysia 2013, now with Lewis as his teammate, Ross Brawn, ever the crook in my opinion, forced Rosberg to stop fighting for a podium position because Lewis had less fuel. Now, think about this. Rosberg has managed his fuel, got to the pointy end of the race, has the momentum and the fuel to pass and claim a podium, and was not allowed to. If that was me, I would be finished. Ask Barrichello and Webber about those things. Incidentally, Barrichello had this happen both at Ferrari and Brawn, And, in both cases, under Ross Brawn. How ironic. Anyway, 2014 arrives and the Mercedes are the dominant team by a mile. It is clear they will win the titles from about race 1. Now, I'm not going to go through it all, but there were certain events that proved the team's bias during the year, from illegal engine modes to public discipline, etc., that left Rosberg in no confusion as to where he stood in the team. To cut it short, how he kept bouncing back after so many battles, defeats and issues proves the mettle of the man. And somehow he won a championship. Let's go back a bit further to see the effects of team orders and how certain drivers never recovered and almost labelled themselves with the number 2 driver tag. David Coulthard had to obey at Williams in '94. Fair enough really, he was a rookie coming in mid-season replacing Senna, and Damon Hill was fighting for a world title. But later in his career, after Melbourne '98, now at McLaren, he had allowed Mika Hakkinen through in 2 races in a row to win, for various reasons. Now, right or wrong, good or bad, it's sad to say that nice guys who do this often don't get seen as true number 1s. Now, sure, we get mad at dirty tactics, the blatant disobedience of certain drivers, but true winners rarely come from the school of, after you mate. David never won a title, despite being in a title-winning car on a few occasions. Let's look at Rubens Barrichello. Again, another driver being a teammate to a favoured son, this time Michael Schumacher, and later Jenson Button. He only made life harder for himself by obeying the contract he had signed. I do respect this quality, but these drivers rarely win and rarely win titles. Think of it this way, both Michael Schumacher and Jenson Button won titles with Rubens as a teammate. Mika Salo, he had a rather checkered or sporadic career, and in 1999 he was replacing the injured Michael Schumacher. He had his one shot at glory, he was leading in Germany, in a Ferrari, yet he obeyed team orders, letting Eddie Irvine win. Now, Irvine himself had been the victim of many a phone call, as he used to put it, so it was good to see it come back. But Salo must rue the day he gave up his one shot at immortality. He has stated he doesn't regret it, but I say bollocks to that. One thing about team orders that is often overlooked is the effect they have on the overall race and sometimes even the championship. The best example I can think of quickly is Eddie Irvine in Japan in 1997. He had a clear advantage on that track, knowing it from previous Japanese championships. Now, he let Schumacher past, but in doing so he slowed so severely that ultimately it cost him a second place. He eventually finished 3rd. Now, what you have to consider with these sorts of things is this. If you slow so much to allow your teammate to pass you, and later on they break down, you may not be in a position to win. Now, if you look at that race in Japan '97, Irvine gave up so much time letting Schumacher past. Had Schumacher broken down, Irvine should have been the winner, but he wouldn't have won because he'd lost so much time. There's got to be a better way of doing team orders than just deliberately slowing your driver right down so obviously. But sometimes teams don't think about that. They're so focused on one driver only. One example of this affecting a world championship, potentially, was Brazil 2010. That year, Red Bull had a chance to issue team orders that would have ensured Webber would be almost guaranteed to win the world championship, or at least go to Abu Dhabi with a much better chance. Instead, they let Vettel win, keeping both drivers' chances even slimmer of beating Alonso in the final race. Now, sure, it was a gamble, and, amazingly, it paid off. But, as a team manager, surely favouring the driver leading in the points is the best way to go. And Red Bull claimed that that's what they used to do. Interestingly, they only seemed to do that when Vettel was leading. And when Webber was leading, Red Bull gives you wings. Britain, remember that one? But we're favouring the guy who's leading in the points. Yeah, but they didn't favour Webber when he was leading the championship right towards the end of 2010. Anyway, whatever happened, Petrov blocked Alonso in that final race, and had that not happened, there wouldn't have been a Red Bull winner anyway. But the point is, if you compare this sort of season, 2010, to say 1986 and 2007, you can see that when teams allow drivers to take points off of each other, sometimes they lose the title. Another aspect of team orders is the aggro, the resulting aggro between the teammates when not obeyed. Prost versus Arnoux in France 82, Villeneuve and Pironi, Italy 82, Jones and Reutemann, Brazil 81. These three examples destroyed relationships permanently, and in the case of Villeneuve, it played a part in his death. Relations between Patrese and Mansell soured a little at Williams, and the same applied to Barrichello and Schumacher at Ferrari. Oh, and of course Webber and Vettel at Red Bull. Some drivers do kiss and make up later on, but some do not. Now don't mention Carlos Reutemann to Alan Jones. To this day, he will go off. There is another type of team order, but this one comes from the driver with the number one status. Whether it be Michael Schumacher, Ayrton Senna, Alain Prost, Lewis Hamilton, Sebastian Vettel, and many other top-line drivers, they often do have a say in who their teammate will be. Senna refused to let Derek Warwick come in at Lotus. Basically, it ruined Derek's career. Prost refused to have Senna at Williams, although, ironically, Prost was the one that insisted Senna come to McLaren in '88. Oh, what a mistake. Now, Lewis Hamilton is consulted on his teammate choice. I love that choice of word. And Sebastian Vettel has a say. Big time. Why do you think Kimi is still at Ferrari? Kimi's obedience in 2017 proved he was driving for a contract, not wins. Whether we like it or not, team orders will always be a part of a sport ultimately run as a business. Where money and contracts are involved, the sport will always suffer. We judge the driver who arrogantly, blatantly disobeys. We hate it when the team issues the orders in the first place. But we equally silently despise the poodle teammate who obeys them. History remembers Ronnie Peterson well for being dutiful and happily supporting Mario Andretti, but it also remembers the death of Gilles Villeneuve. We also look back at David Coulthard and think of him as a number two, yet on his day he was amazing. We think back to Webber as a poodle to Vettel, but there were times where Webber had Vettel's measure. Sadly, team orders has all kinds of ramifications. How about Singapore 2008? Crashgate. Flavio Briatore orders Nelson Piquet Jr. to crash, ultimately bringing out the safety car, favouring Alonso, who has just pitted. Alonso then won the race. There is conjecture whether it was Pat Simmons, Flavio Briatore or Nelson Piquet Jr. who came up with the idea, but either way, that resulted in a win that wouldn't have been a win, and it was orchestrated. It may be a good character trait to obey a team order. It may prove you have integrity, that you are a man of your word, and you can be trusted. But I do like the way Max Verstappen handled it in 2015 when he was asked to move over for his teammate. All we heard on the TV commentary was, "No!" Straight out. So funny. This is Lucien Byfieldt with the Formula Loosh podcast from Australia. Bye for now.